Okay guys, we're back to work on this lawnmower again. If you remember the last video, we got a free lawnmower and we did a diagnosis on it. We did 3 different tests. We did a spark test, we did a compression test, and we did a fuel test, and it started during the fuel test. So we're going to start digging into the fuel system. And I'd say 90% of the time what we have is an issue with the carburetor. And what we're going to wind up doing is taking the carburetor off and cleaning it. But we'll make sure that gasoline is able to flow from the gas tank to the carburetor. There's not really much to the fuel system of a lawnmower. I mean, it could be that there's a bad filter that's inside the gas tank, but we'll get to that. So I'm going to point you at the lawnmower, and we're going to start taking it apart. All right, so we're looking at our lawnmower. And we got to get our air filter housing off. Looks very similar to the small engine project we had. We have 2 bolts that hold the air filter housing on, and I believe there's another 10 under there somewhere. There's a 10, I believe, right there that we're going to wind up taking off. 10 millimeter is a very common bolt. This is why you see memes about it on the internet, about 10 millimeter sockets going missing all the time. It is true. I can't tell you how many 10 millimeter sockets I've lost in my lifetime. It's kind of crazy. That's why it's very good to have a kit like this. You can keep it organized, and you know right away if you got something missing. Like I see 2 sockets missing there, a 3/8 and a 7/16. I know where my 7/16 is, but I don't know where my 3/8 went. It's probably hanging around the shop somewhere. I've been a messy guy lately. Alright, so I'm going to take these 3 bolts that hold the air cleaner housing on. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there, kids that I teach, aren't too confident in doing this type of work. This was something very common when I was a teenager, is working on this type of stuff, because of our fathers. Our fathers knew how to do all this kind of stuff, especially my dad. My dad was a World War II vet. He knew how to do a lot of different things. Alright, so what I'm looking at now is, I guess this is our gas on and off. And this is our governor rod that controls our throttle. And I guess we have another throttle rod. It might be a choke. I haven't looked at the controls yet, but yeah, there's a choke. You hit the choke and see if that moves. I've never taken one of these lawnmowers apart before. Yeah, it puts pressure on it, but there we go. Alright, that's our choke. I don't know if you guys were able to see that or not, but there's our choke. Right there. And when I move this lever all the way, winds up closing our choke. Alright. So now I gotta figure out how to get these linkages off. A lot of times we need a screwdriver. I've gotten these 2 bolts out of the way. Now, sometimes they're just stuck on with a gasket. Alright, so it's now slid. Try not to break any gaskets, because this is how you can do this without having to spend any money. So right here, I believe, is my fuel line to the gas tank. And I'm going to try to pry it off. There's a little clamp on it. It looks pretty hard to get to. Usually you squeeze them and move them. Sometimes you can just pry them off. And now I'm not worried about if I crack this line or nothing. I have plenty of fuel line around. There she goes. And do I have fuel coming out? Yes, I have fuel coming out. So that's good. So that lets me know that I don't have a bad filter. But let me get that to stop before I make a mess here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find a vice grip to kind of clamp that so when I have it off it doesn't leak all over the place. Alright, another thing you can do is when you get it off, you can shove a bolt in it, which is probably what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take that off. Spilling a little fuel right now. And I'm going to wind up putting a bolt in it. I'm going to wind up draining all this gasoline out of here anyway. I'm sure it's no good. Alright, so I put a bolt in there. It's going to keep it from leaking. Now this one looks similar to the fuel pump, the carburetor that we had on the last engine project. So this throttle lever, if I move it to the side, I can pull my rod straight out. And I can pull my spring out, my throttle return spring. And then as I see that I'm moving this out, that this linkage is probably going to give me enough room to work this piece out. So I just had to bend that a little bit. I'll bend it straight when I go back in. And now we got our carburetor off. Got a gasket right here. Wow, it looks exactly like the gasket we used on the last motor. It's got a D shape to it. It's a lot smaller carburetor. You can see our throttle is a lot smaller than the last motor we used. But I'm going to take this over to the bench, put down some paper towels, get some carburetor cleaner. And we're going to clean this all up, and then we're going to open it up and see if we find anything wrong inside. See if there's a lot of dirt in the bowl, and check out the needle and seat. Alright guys, till next video. Alright guys, we're back. Put the carburetor on the bench. And start hitting the outside with some carb cleaner, clean it up a little bit. A lot of dirt on this thing. So that's not causing the problem, all the outside dirt. Dirt that you get on the inside is going to be the problem. I just want to knock some of the loose stuff off. Alright. We'll wipe down the rag a little bit. Now if I had a gasket kit, I would throw it in the dip tank. Take all these little plastic pieces off so they wouldn't melt in it. Alright, so let's get to the nitty gritty. Getting this fuel bowl off. Looks like we got one bolt right there. It's holding the fuel bowl on. Alright, take that off. Like I said, some of these retaining nuts on the fuel bowl are actually the jet. They have a hole in them. Let's see what we got in here. Usually there's a little gasket on the nut. Yep, gasket's there. I don't see any hole in the nut, so it's not one of those jet type nuts. Take my bowl off. Oh, there's a lot of crud in there. And we have our needle and seat. That's our needle. This is our retainer. This is called our float. Now what I'm suspecting, oh yeah, the jet inside is totally blocked up. I can't even see through it. I'm going to have to hit it with some carb cleaner, put some eyewear on, and then unscrew that. So let me find my safety glasses, which seem to be missing at this moment. Oh, there they are. Like I said, you don't want to get this stuff in your eyes. Get this in your eyes, you'd be crying. Alright, so I'm seeing, actually can see the jet a little bit now. Looks like I'm going to need a flathead screwdriver. Well, guys, I'm running into some difficulties with this carburetor. It seems like the jet inside has kind of like broke itself. It doesn't want to come loose. So what I'm going to try to do is use my can of carburetor cleaner, put it in the hole of the jet, and see if I can just use the pressure of the cleaning solution by using the straw on the end of it to push it through. Now you definitely have to be careful with your eyes doing this because it's going to want to back spray out. So I'm going to put this paper towel over it. And look to see if it's coming out of the carburetor, which it is. It's coming through the hole. I'm going to keep running some stuff in there because whatever junk got in there, hopefully this cleaner is powerful enough to dissolve it. The other thing I might try is a piece of wire. I'm going to try pushing a piece of wire through it. Now in the shop I have these little wires that are good for cleaning out the oxyacetylene torch. They're real small and they're kind of stiff. They're good for doing this kind of work. Up, it's going through. Run that back and forth a couple times. Try to clean the hole out. Run the power flush through it again a couple more times. Put my straw on there. Oh, see it flowing through. So we got the jet unblocked. Now what I'm going to do is clean out this fuel bowl. Should definitely be doing this in a well ventilated area. Fumes are going to start to get to me in a minute. Might have to put my respirator on. But then you won't be able to hear me talk. Alright, so I got the fuel bowl kind of cleaned out. And we're gonna wind up putting this back together, bolting it back up, putting some new gas in it, and see if she'll run. Alright, so I gotta get this needle into that seat, and I want to see if this is opened up from where the fuel goes in. It should come out of that hole. So I'll try the straw again. Turn the switch that way. So that's off. Well, that was blocked too. It's finally flowing through it. It took a little bit. So that could have been the problem too. That line from there to there was blocked up. Alright, so let me put that together. So once again, I'm going to put that needle into that hole. And then I'm going to put this little pin back in. This pin acts like our pivot point. So this can pivot. So when this is sitting on there and this float goes down, fuel comes in. And as fuel comes in, it lifts the bowl and it shuts it off. It's kind of like your back of your toilet. So when the float's down, water's coming into the back of your toilet, flow comes up, shuts the toilet off. Alright. Put this back on. Screw back on. Tighten it up. Alright. Alright, let's start putting this carburetor back on. So I'm going to have to get my choke rod set up. So my choke went in here, and as it slid on, has to go in a hole on this rod. And I kind of had to bend it to get it in. So let me do that again. There we go. So now my choke rod is on. Now I got to put my throttle rod on and my return spring. These needle nose are handy for that, to hold it. Alright, so that's on. Now I have to take this bolt out of the fuel line and put my fuel line back on. Needle nose are really good at grabbing small objects. So let me take that off, put my fuel line back on. I'm just wiggling that line back on. Alright. And I have my gasket. And now my air filter housing. And then I had some bolts. I had one bolt and two 10mm nuts. So I had my two 10s. And that one in there. Now tighten them up. That's tight. That's tight. That's tight. I'm going to get a little bit of carb clean to prime it. Give it a couple cracks. Alright, got a little gas in there. I'll wind up spraying a little more carburetor fluid down there. Give it a couple cranks. Let's see what happens. Wow, she runs. I'm happy about that. I got a new lawnmower. Well, I got some decent lawnmowers, but maybe I could sell this one for $5 or $10. But yeah, that's all it was to it. Clean that carburetor up a little bit. I think it was that on and off switch tube that was going into there. That was really blocked, and that jet was really blocked, and the bowl had a lot of garbage on it. But there you go. Someone threw this out. Didn't know how to fix it. And it's not an expensive lawnmower. It's probably like an $80 lawnmower, you know. So, I mean, you take this to a Honda place to get it fixed, it's probably going to cost you more to fix it than it's worth. But if you have the knowledge, you don't have to spend that kind of money. So there you go. All good. I'm proud of myself. Alright guys, see you next time. I just get done fixing that lawnmower and I come outside and it's snowing. This is crazy. Weren't we just out here like an hour ago diagnosing this thing? Now it's snowing.